Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Pond, Awards Editor of TheWrap, and we're happy to have you here for our 2022 Emmy screening of the Stage 13 documentary series March on the CW. We're here with the creative team behind the series. We're going to start by showing you a trailer, and then we'll go right into a conversation with our guests. To the audience, please participate in the live chat, share your thoughts, let us know where you're tuning in from. And now, before I introduce our guests, let's look at the trailer to March.
TT on the mic makes some noise for the baddest band, Prairie View A&M University, better known as the Marching Storm.
Being a Marching Storm is a very prestigious and coveted position.
Our performance level is just far above any other band.
Of course, Prairie View's the best, the Black Foxes. We can't go wrong with them.
We are going to get in here and grind every day to be the very best that we can be.
Now that everybody is able to hear us, it's pretty important to be able to make your mark.
Welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce executive producer and head of Unscripted at Stage 13, Shari Scorca, executive producers Cheryl Horner McDonough, Jamail Shelton, and Carlton Jordan, co-executive producers Christina Louviere and Precious Tuesday, and supervising casting director Kelley Allen. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for what's really a fascinating series.
Thank you
for having us.
I mean, obviously, as people can tell from the trailer, if they haven't seen the series, this is a series about the Marching Storm, which is the marching band at Prairie View A&M University in Texas, which is a historically Black college or university. And I'm just wondering, how did this begin? What led you to Prairie View and to the idea of covering a band at an HBCU? Shari, did this start with Stage 13? Was it brought to you? What's the genesis here?
So it started, I would say, in 2015, 2016, when Cheryl came to Stage 13 with an idea for a series at an HBCU about an amazing marching band at Bethune-Cookman University in Central Florida. And we actually shot that series with Cheryl, and it was a series called Marching Orders. It was a short form series that we that was on Netflix in, I believe, 2017, 2018. And we just became, I would say, obsessed with this world, and I'll let Cheryl jump in on that part. But how we ended up at Prairie View is, we never wanted to stop. Like, we love this world so much. We've been following all these bands. You start going down rabbit holes where you watch all the different bands online, go to the Honda Battle of the Bands. And then in 2019, right before everything shut down, we went to the Texas State Fair Classic and saw Grambling versus Prairie View, and absolutely were blown away by the band, and then at Prairie View and at Grambling as well. But Prairie View, there was something special once we started digging into the band itself, and the it's a 300 plus person band that they move to all these different locations. They do these insane formations on the field. And also the university itself is just so fascinating. It was the first HBCU in Texas. It was formed in 1876. It's on this you get chills when you step on the campus because of the history of the land it's on. And it's an amazing university with it graduates the most STEM students, the second in the state, I think, and Texas is a huge state. So we fell in love with this band, and we kept the relationship going through the pandemic. But I'm going to let Cheryl jump in, because she, is the first person who brought me, into this HBCU marching band world.
Right. Yeah. Cheryl, what led you into this world?
Believe it or not, I saw a similar band when I was in high school, which is a very long time ago. And this is something that was so memorable for me. It was just something I never forgot about. So I came to this as a fan. It was something that, I loved. I loved the pageantry. I loved the dance. I loved seeing 300 people work together on the field in the way that they do. And when I feel that way, I want to know how it all works. What goes into this? How do they do it? That looks hard. What does that take? So I come at it as a fan, and really with tremendous respect and curiosity. So this is something that I sat with for decades, and having this series happen was just a dream come true.
So Cheryl, you were into this way before Beyonce brought it to Coachella, I guess.
That is true. That is true. Yep, it's been decades. So it really, that's all I can say. It's a dream come true to see this come to life, all these years later. And the series was exactly what I was hoping for. You see what goes into it. You see the hard work. You see 300 people overcoming challenges personally, overcoming challenges on the field. You see the positivity, the fun. So yeah, it's everything I hoped it would be.
Mm-hmm. Right. But I mean, it also feels to me like it's a lot more than fun here. I mean, this is, an avenue of artistic expression from a community that sometimes, its artistic expression is not in the forefront. I mean, and I'll open this to anybody.
Absolutely.
Does this feel like an important project at this point in time?
I think the timing was perfect. It was definitely 2020 was a lot for everyone with COVID, and then the Black Lives Matter movement. So I felt like the timing was definitely right for something inspirational like March, and it showed these kids who are in this marching band, passionate about what they do, balancing their personal lives along with their school, along with their passion for band. I think the timing was excellent. When I saw marching orders, I felt like, okay, this is a show that I feel like is something that everyone needs to see. So the fact that we had the opportunity to make March, and I feel like even take it to the next level with a longer time period to like really showcase what these kids do, what they go through, and what they experience along with their journey.
Mm-hmm. Right. So how did each of you get involved? I mean, Carlton, what led you to this project, and why did you want to do it?
Oh my God. Well, I got a call from a producer I was working on another project with, and she was like, "We have this great show about a marching band." And I was totally in from the beginning because I was in a marching band in high school. And one of the cast members is also from the same high school that I went to. So I was like, I'm totally in. And I went to an HBCU, I went to Howard. So I know like the nuance and the care that a project like this would need for someone in post, because I'm an EP in post. And, I immediately jumped on board. And I really just wanted to make sure that, talking about the times we were in, there was a lot of trauma going on in the world with COVID, and a lot of injustice that was happening in the news and in real life. So I wanted to make sure we had some fun kids that were cool, that you wanted to watch them play instruments and like really love them like on the field and off the field, their relationships and just the nuance of just being a Gen Zer. It was a really, really great insight into that world. And I wanted to, we do get into some deep subjects in the show, but we also, my sort of headspace going in was we need to balance it with Black joy and excitement and fun. Like these are kids, they should be having fun and doing all the things that we did when we were young. So I was really excited to get on board.
Yeah, right. Christina, what brought you in, and why did you want to do this?
I've actually worked with Jamail on a number of projects, and so he brought the opportunity to me, and I was actually really excited because I have family that went to Prairie View. My brother got his master's, my sister-in-law went to undergrad there. I have a lot of family in Houston. So for one, it brought me back to the place I was born, and to a school that I really wasn't that privy to, but family went there. And when I got there, I was like, oh, wow, like this is phenomenal. I love that this is part of our family legacy in a sense. And I just had such a great appreciation for the school, especially once we got there and learned the history. And really at the end of the day, I think Precious and I had many conversations, and we were like, I think we probably should have gone to Prairie View for undergrad. Like, it was just such an exciting, experience, and something to be so appreciative to be a part of, because it was special. The culture, the kids, the history. So, it's kind of a no-brainer, but I ended up experiencing something a lot greater than I thought I would, really. So
yeah. Precious, what about you? How did you get into this?
Started with the same as Christina. Jamail brought the project to me, and I was immediately interested because I used to be part of drill team in high school in Inglewood, California. So I am very, very, very familiar with band life. I also got accepted to Norfolk University, which is the HBCU, but I didn't go. So I felt like this is going to be my second chance to go to HBCU. And I am an honorary alumni of PV now. Everybody knows that, including all the school faculty. And it brought me a lot of joy. It brought me a lot of joy to work with people who look like me, who had the same challenges as me when I were their age. Working through life, trying to become an adult, figure out who they are. And when Jamail and I were talking about it, like, it just really inspired my heart to do a project like this. Because I remember that age, like, that is the age when you're trying to figure out everything and trying to become the best adult you could be. So it was kind of a heartwarming project that I wanted to put my hands on, as well as my heart.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, obviously, with a project like this, you have the story that's sort of unfolding in front of you, and you don't know where it's going. You know that as you start to film, they're ranked number 8. You don't know where they're going to end up. You don't know what's going to happen over the course of the season. But the thing you can control is who out of this 300-person band and all the people around them you're going to focus on. But I would think, Kelley, for you, I mean, casting is so important in something like this, and you have so many people to choose from. So how do you go about saying, here are the 10, 15, 20 people that we should really use to tell our story?
Well, let's start with the process, right? So yeah, we had over 300 band members, and it's like, whoa, who wants to be on TV, right? Like, show me your hands. So it definitely was a sorting process. Like, we had to kind of dig in and go through and see first who was even like interested at the opportunity, and then get all those kids interviewed, and then really just start to, figure out who's going through what, what's the story, what instrument does that person play? Because we needed to have a nice variety of things for the viewers to watch. So there was a lot of consideration in the casting process. So even though we had technically, our cast kind of ready to go, we did have over 300 people that we had to, go through to land on the cast that we felt would bring that nice variety, the different storylines, the different adversities and challenges that they were all going through, to really, really, hit home with our viewers and let them go through these journeys with these kids. And, I say kids because now I'm like, they're all my babies now. We go through so much with them, and just preparing them and making them comfortable about the process, because they weren't really looking to be on television. So that was like another thing. And I'm just so proud of everybody and how the season ended. And it's also exciting, but the casting process was pretty interesting. Me and my team, shout out to my team. We really had to kind of dig in there and get everybody excited and interviewed and packaged cute and sent over to the network and our executives for further consideration. So it definitely was a process, but I'm happy at, the way it all turned out, for sure.
Yeah. So how many of the 300 plus did you actually sit down with?
I mean, if I had to just kind of guesstimate, it was definitely high hundreds. So, maybe hitting about 2. We went through a lot. Yeah. So many different departments. We needed, again, a balance, right? Can't have everybody from, the drums, right? Like, we had to kind of pick and choose a little bit of the different types of band as far as their instruments and things, so that we're getting different representation as far as, diversity of their backgrounds and their ages and, how far into their college journey they are. So we had to do a lot of weeding, but there was some fantastic talent. And I mean, those kids gave me a new appreciation for just band life, right? I had no idea that it was that intense. I am not the girl that was in band at all. Like, I thought those kids were like crazy for waking up early in the morning to like play the horns out on the field. So I did not really understand or appreciate exactly what goes into being a part of a marching band, especially of this stature. I mean, this is top of the line, right? And these kids work hard. So I'm hoping that everyone got that and got to see that, because they work so hard. And they're still college students. They still have to go to class. You know what I mean? That's a whole nother thing. So shout out to the kids for like holding it down, because it's a lot.
Right. I mean, one of the storylines is the fact that COVID has affected the way they can do their season, and they don't get the alumni to come back on the field with them and things like that. But for you guys, as as filmmakers, COVID must have had a big effect on what you could do as well. And I don't know who's best.
I would just jump in and say it's probably a little different than what other people will say. Shari and I were waiting to film this for so long, and I felt like we kind of got lucky. It didn't feel that way because we still did have to deal with COVID, but we kind of got lucky because we started filming. I think it was right between Delta and Omicron. We kind of snuck in there in a little sweet spot, and so we had, even though it was difficult, we did time it well, and we had better access than we would have at other times. So it was like, of course there were still all the production protocols, which everyone else can talk about, but it did turn out to be good timing.
And I want to jump in just before, and then I'll toss it over to you, Jamail, because we didn't get into how Jamail came to this project, and I think that it relates not completely to COVID, but it will. I promise I'll make the circle. Is that he, because we had to have a tight crew on the ground, it meant that, there's two other co-EPs, Jenny McNicholas and Marcel Fuentes were amazing, just didn't fit in this screen. And Cheryl and I, we couldn't all be there all the time. So we needed to make sure we had someone on the ground, our showrunner on the ground, who could really run the show, we could trust. And also, we were looking for people. As you heard, there was a special connection with everybody. And Jamail, to me, was the unicorn who like came into our field, like, because he was, he's from Houston. He went to an HBCU. He knew Prairie View was part of his life. He didn't go to Prairie View because, he wanted to leave home and go to Atlanta for college. But like, he had this special relationship with the area and the town. And I just felt like it was great to have somebody, so that because we were managing it from afar most of the time. I mean, I did spend some time in Prairie View as well, but, and then obviously for him to handpick people like Christina and Precious, and then, for us to all collaborate to find the rest of our crew to create that like right group of people, we don't, with that special connection, it wasn't just about, I want to make sure I have, Black producers because we're at a Black school. It wasn't about that. It was about the desire to tell the story the way everybody just described, and their special feelings towards it. And the reason, again, I think to take it back to COVID, the reason that was so important is because we couldn't be there to manage it. I needed to make sure I had a strong person on the ground to manage through, because there were, COVID creates challenges. It creates extra stuff you got to do. So, like you have to test every other day. You have to make time for all of that type of stuff. So I'll let Jamail talk about, how COVID really affected shooting and the band itself.
No, Shari, you're too kind. I really appreciated that she gave me the opportunity. I mean, that's what definitely made the project so personal to me. Being from Houston, attending HBCU, I went to Clark Atlanta University. So the experience, and actually when I was at Clark Atlanta, that's when they actually filmed the movie Drumline. So, it was kind of full circle for me to admire them when they filmed Drumline, and then for me to be able to be a producer in my hometown and produce a project like this. So, it was definitely a full circle moment for me. And, we wanted to make sure that we represented the culture and as far as HBCU and band culture, to the fullest. And I felt like we accomplished that. I literally feel like the luckiest person ever as a showrunner to be able to assemble the Avengers of producers and get, you know, people with such amazing talents like Kelley with casting, who I've known for over 20 years, and Precious and Christina and Carlton, to like with producer with such strong skill sets to like tell this story. You know, I'm so appreciative of it and all of them. And like any production, COVID has just been a pain in the butt. Like, you know, it's no one likes dealing with taking a COVID test and shoving it up your nose every 48 hours. Like it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, but we had to make sure that as a crew that we were keeping each other safe, dealing with these kids and making sure that they stay safe as well, because they go home to their, you know, be around other students, or some go home to their families. So we wanted to make sure that, you know, we created a safe environment, you know, under the circumstances, because COVID has made not just this production, but all productions across the board very difficult to deal with. But, you know, we did the best we could, and we achieved our goal. We achieved it and got it done.
Christina and Precious, were there certain specific challenges that you had when you were filming this?
You know, I wouldn't necessarily say challenges per se, but I will say that we were working with kids who, real people, you know, real kids who aren't used to being on television. This is a whole new world for them, an entirely new process. And they're getting to know a group of people they've never seen before in their lives. I mean, obviously, after Kelley did the handoff, Precious, Jamail, and myself really got a chance to get to know them as much as possible via Zoom. But it really was about talking them through the process, making them comfortable, getting them to open up as much as they were comfortable doing, without feeling like we were exploiting any stories or exploiting the kids. Because at the end of the day, they're still students, they're still kids, they're still a part of the marching band. They didn't sign up for a show like this for a paycheck like a lot of other shows. So I think we really collectively as a team had to handle the kids delicately, and maybe not produce like we're used to producing other shows, and getting them to trust us. And because you don't just trust someone like out the gate after knowing them for 5 minutes. That's insane to do. So, you know, that takes you know, developing relationships and talking through things, and allowing and being a sounding board for them, and hearing their concerns or their excitement, and figuring out how to tell their story, so that we could get what we needed to make a good show, but so they could, you know, they felt comfortable and were happy and hopefully proud of the end result when they saw the show. So I think that was our biggest thing, was just handling these kids with care, you know.
I'm going to piggyback off of that and then let Precious speak, but not just the kids too, but also the staff too. That was a whole nother, you know, perspective that was important to tell, because Dr. Zachary, Mrs. Zachary, you know, the staff were so intricate in these kids' journey and in the storytelling and the advice that they give them and the guidance that they give them, the respect and admiration that these kids have for the staff members. So I just wanted to, before I move any forward any further, I just want to give a shout out to that staff, because they really, really were amazing, and they do amazing things in these kids' lives. I'll let Precious take it from there.
Yes, I had to interview all of them too.
Yes, she did.
I think Christina and Jamail answered your question perfectly. I'm just going to piggyback a little bit off of them. Prairie View, as we all know the history of that historically Black institution, Prairie View is a family. So when it comes to that family, they have to trust you and you have to feel like family. And that takes a lot of sitting down, having lunch with them, talking to them, learning a lot about them, learning a lot about the history, being part of that family. So one of the challenges was to make sure that we were a part of the family. We were not producers when we were on that campus. We were family. That was our auntie, that was our cousin, that was our mother-in-law. We had to become family. We had to be a part of the institution and what it represented.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we achieved that very well.
Yeah,
very much. Absolutely.
Hence the TV shirt.
I mean, one of the other things that I think is pretty remarkable about this show is you were filming in the fall of 2021, but you were on the air with 8 hours of TV in January of 2022.
It's impossible. It's never been done. It's impossible.
And shouldn't be done again. It was insane.
Carlton, if you were the guy for post, what was that like?
That was a marathon, which is awesome. You know, I love marathons. You know, and it only worked. I had an amazing post and story team. I pulled, like, we had the Avengers in production. We had the Avengers in post too. Some amazing editors and story producers that I worked with throughout my time, you know, in Unscripted, that I knew could, one, deliver fast turnarounds and also deliver the heart. You know, that was the main thing going into post and the whole conversation. And as being a part of the family, even though I wasn't, you know, on set having brunch with them like Precious was, I was, you know, we had to make sure that the show looked like that we cared about the cast members, that we understood their heart and their intentions. Like Christina said, they weren't reality stars. They don't have aspirations to be reality stars. They literally gave like a fly on the wall peek into their world, and they go and graduate and join the community. So we didn't want to ruin anything about their lives. So it was very much constant on our mind, even with the speed of post-production. I definitely had to make the post team like slow down and think about heart and nuance and then joy. Like I said before, I want cool kids. Like when I used to watch The Hills, I wanted to be like, you know, Lauren Conrad, believe it or not. So I wanted our audience watching it to be like, hey, these are people we can hang with, or I would love to like watch their journey because they're just cool kids to watch. So even though the turnaround was really quick, I think we did a great job with the production and communication, literally daily with Jamail, Christina, and Precious. We always talked about every storyline. With Shari and Cheryl, we always like had a lot of thought in what should make the air and what was the best representation of like positivity, fun, and you know, these real great storylines. So it was just a lot of communication, a lot of over communication, and just a team effort to get it to air. And it was a marathon for sure, but it was worth it.
I'll jump in because I was you know, I talked a lot to the CW, and the opportunity was because, you know, they were airing All American Homecoming, and it was a good lead in to that show takes place on the campus. It's a scripted, you know, show. It's fiction, but it still took place at an HBCU, and it felt like, you know, the right time. You know, we got in, you know, right in time for Black History Month. The timing was right. It was definitely not ideal to ever do post this quickly, especially the interesting thing about COVID, forget about production for a second, is post-production. We were literally in every time zone at one point. You know, Cheryl and some of the editors were in Atlanta, and our super. And then I think we had people in Houston, you know, our production team. I don't know if we had any post people. Then we had somebody in Denver at one point, and then the rest of us were in LA. So I think that it was, you know, you're editing in the cloud, you're dealing with, you know, tech potential issues and time zones. So sometimes I would get emails from Carlton at the weirdest hours of the day because, you know, he was like, okay, today I'm on East Coast time. And then, you know, we'd get stuff to Cheryl in the middle of the night, but she'd be able to do notes first thing in the morning because, you know, we had to work out the schedule. And it just meant this wasn't a holiday season where we got to take too many days off, but it, you know, it was worth it. You know, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, sort of, but the rest of the time, you know, we were just communicating. Like Carlton said, it was just nonstop with one another.
If I can just say one thing on that, because I've never, clearly I've been doing this a long time, and I have never been through a post process like this one. First of all, the fact that we all work remotely now is, you know, is a different way for me. But it was so insanely fast. And we would get these cuts, you know, our first rough cuts would be incredibly rough. You know, they would be massive black holes and placeholder scenes, and you know, and sometimes it was really hard to see what the show could look like, and so our feedback sometimes, you know, we couldn't even quite give notes. We would give notes like, we'd like more humor, this one's feeling a little sad, or this one's feeling a little this or that, or we'd like more music. How can we bring in more performance into this episode? And so we would give these kinds of notes back to Carlton, and then 3 days later we would get like a show. we would get something that was completely transformed, that was totally different, that had scenes in it that were polished, that we had never seen before. And it would every pass would come very quickly, and it would just grow by leaps and bounds so quickly. That was my experience with this. That was incredible to watch.
So were you editing as you went along during the shoot before you knew where some of these storylines were going to end up?
I think we started post the day after we started. I don't know. I think we started post right away because you just started cutting the scenes together and then having to adjust later, right, Carlton?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, talking to Jamail, I would be like, oh, this is so great that these, two kids are in love. And I'm like, wait, pause for a minute. We think they had like a conversation. I had to make sure that what was happening in post was tracking on the field. So we wouldn't get excited about like a storyline and then it kind of goes nowhere. So, it was definitely like on the go. And then the great thing about this show, because it is documentary sort of based, you could just follow wherever the stories went. We weren't trying to like create like these scripted like storylines. So if the story shifted, we would just shift with it, and it felt more real and had a docu feel, which is what we wanted in the beginning.
Yeah. Did you find yourselves at any point like backing up and saying, wait a minute, this person who maybe wasn't, we weren't thinking was going to be a major player, suddenly they're involved in stuff, maybe we should go back and film some more with, with so-and-so? I mean, were there people, Kelley, that weren't flagged high up early on that ended up being significant?
Well, I had hope in all my kids, just to let you know. I was pushing for, a lot of them to shine, but naturally what I can get from somebody in a 30-minute, hour-long interview and then chop that down to a 3-minute cut is, you're going to need to wait and see as, Jamail and his team got to meet them and really see what's going on, and they're opening up more. So yeah, definitely there are people that kind of climb the ranks. I mean, I think we always had like high hopes and just a lot of love for Trey and his story, and him being a father and being young and just kind of going through this life and school and the band and trying to manage everything. But I mean, really seeing that transform and really having the producers dive into his story and seeing it like living and breathing totally brought it to a whole new place. So there definitely were some storylines that I initially met and was like, okay, I like you. Oh, you're fun. Oh, you're this. Okay, that. And then seeing them actually progress like throughout the season and grow was like so rewarding. So that definitely happens a lot, especially on this show for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. For the people who were on the ground there, especially at Prairie View, I mean, it seems to me when you're on that campus, you're in a place that used to be a plantation with all that entails. I mean, does that give you a responsibility, or do you feel the import of that when you're on that campus?
100%. And the campus and the staff, everyone there's a mutual respect and acknowledgement for it. And we made sure that, even it comes down to walking on the grass, that, there were certain areas that you're not even supposed to walk on the grass, just to, pay respect and homage to, it being in plantations and burial sites on campus. So, everyone's aware of it, everyone respects it. And the crew and definitely respected it, and we did what we could to feel a part of it. Again, we all feel like we're honorary students of Prairie View A&M at this point. And if anything, we wish we could have spent more time with all the kids. Like, there's so many layers to them, so and there's a lot of layers to peel back. So we did the best we could with the time frame that we had, but it was a lot of great talent within that entire band to choose from, both staff and the students.
Mm-hmm. Right. Christina or Precious, I mean, for you, was there, did you get the feeling when you were on that campus and, in those areas?
1000%. Us being there on the ground, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. So we have to uphold that responsibility. We are making a show about our ancestors as well. We are on a plantation. There are people buried right next to where people are playing drums. So the responsibility was all to uphold this documentary with respect, love, honor, and like Carlton said, joy. We had to have Black joy in there.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I feel like in television and film lately, a lot of people have been exploring this idea of telling stories from marginalized communities that might not normally, have their stories told. But then there's also the question of who gets to tell those stories and how do you make sure that you're giving the community its voice rather than coming in from the outside to tell their story. I mean, Shari and Cheryl, was that a concern for you?
Oh, absolutely. That was something we talked about a lot. I'm well aware of who I am and kind of my lack of knowledge and my and like I said, I'm a fan and I'm curious, but we needed to make sure that we had the right team to really get in and tell these stories. I don't feel like it's necessarily my story to tell. So, it was this was something we talked a lot about, and I feel very good about the way it all worked out.
Yeah, I think at Stage 13, our part of our ethos is to empower storytellers, and I think that's what we did. And I've known Cheryl for many years, back from our MTV days. And I think that, telling authentic stories is really important to us. I think we helped shepherd the story, but at some point, I can't have every life experience, and I think that having the right people on the ground and leading in post, to really make sure the check on culture, the check on, there's a level of where are we over explaining something, where are we not explaining it enough, and we create checks and balances for each other. And what was important to show, there was some stuff that we tapped into religion a little bit. That was something that Carlton, was like, this is really an important part of Southern Black culture. And then there was other, nuances when we were shooting with the young women that Christina and Precious really advocated for. And I think that we, it's about listening and respecting and understanding that, we want to make sure we tell a cohesive story. And I think that that's what Cheryl, myself, Marcel, Jenny, our whole team did. But as I've never walked in the shoes, of a Black person living in the South, living in, going to an HBCU and to have, some, insider perspective is really how we like to tell stories, from that inside out, whether just the people, the characters on screen, as well as the people behind the scenes telling those stories. I mean, our diverse crew, again, wasn't there to check boxes, but when I look, there's this great picture that we took at a sunset on the field, and you look and it's not a monolith, it's all different types of faces, but it was such a great diverse crew. And I think it really added to the nuance, the layers, the vibe of the show.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, there were great conversations that we had. There were times when Shari or I would say, I don't get that. I don't understand what's happening here. And we would have those conversations, we would be able to say, okay, well, this is something that we understand and you don't understand. How can we make it that this makes sense for everybody, and I think that was really healthy.
Yeah, I would say that, having such a diverse crew went such a long way. It gave a lot of people opportunity, but I would say it also inspired a lot of those kids. Whenever they saw our diverse crew, by the time that we wrapped, the students were calling out production terms and asking them to hold for sound and you know, and holding the camera. You know, they all got involved, and it all. I felt like they walked away saying, "I can do that. I want to get into production. I want to, you know, I can see myself in that field." So it went a really, really long way, more than people really realize.
Yeah, and you know, and I really appreciated those conversations, you know, because you know we do live in our world, and some things, but everyone gets this. And you're like, okay, maybe we need to do a little more explaining for the new audience that's jumping into the world. I mean, it's a very specific world. It's HBCU. It's also marching band. It's also Gen Zers. So some things that were, you know, they needed to be explained, and we had a nice conversation on like, what do we just let the audience sort of just learn as they go, and what do we want to point out? But maybe we add a sentence just so they aren't confused about what's going on. And because it is a show that needs to be entertaining and fun, like I keep saying. But it was great to, you know, have those conversations and balance out like what was, you know, how do we explain this world?
Yeah,
it wasn't just race either. We talked about gender and LGBTQ, you know, points of view, and it was everything. You know, I can speak up when it comes to something that's about being a woman, but you know, so we all these conversations were, you know, holistic. It was certainly not just about race, which I really liked that we all were able to collaborate in that way.
Yeah. So have you been able to go back and show it to the students in Prairie View?
I mean, they watched along with it, and they had screening parties. We worked very closely with, you know, the band and the marketing team at the university. Got great feedback from everybody. I know that on the last episode, they did a giant screening in the field, and, you know, we sent them some swag because everybody, you know, outside of the industry folks, you know, you might have a stack of swag, but like, it's nice for everybody in Prairie View to get some stuff and to really enjoy the show as a group. And I think that, I think we got good feedback again, because we didn't create characters. They were their authentic, true selves. And so people weren't embarrassed by it. I mean, everyone gets embarrassed to see themselves on camera, but we didn't force them to be somebody they weren't. I think that they were really proud of it. I know I've talked to Dr. Zachary, the band leader, quite a bit. And you know, he's over the moon that this is the show that happened, you know, at his university with this particular year of students who went through the whole COVID experience. I think that there's a special resilience there. And I just want to say, like, piggybacking off of what Jamail saying, like, about inspiring those kids. I remember I was there the last day of shooting, and I remember Trey's running around you know, trying to ask all kinds of questions. And it's just, that old saying, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And I think that, like, everybody saw that they could be this, even if they don't want to be in production, but knowing that they could do something that they didn't think they could do. I thought was just such a powerful moment. You know, it felt like we were being responsible, but that wasn't the point. It kind of hit us, I think, at the end when we saw how the kids reacted. So
yeah, right. Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to end as well. So you know, thank you very much for the audience that's watching. Thank you for joining us. You can be the first to know about upcoming wrap screenings and get exclusive content if you take advantage of our free trial membership to Wrap Pro. Also, for other screening information, including past screenings you may have missed, visit TheWrap.com and click on the events tab. Thank you all for for really a terrific and important series and for a great conversation.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.